everybody, I'm Guy, and I'm a co-founder of an amazing family, few tech companies, and a Go meetup group. So the story I will tell you started 10 years ago when I founded a new company and I was looking for the best stack to suit the business. The day I selected Go as the backend solution, I got a call. The biggest customer ever is about to visit, come from abroad, and he wishes to see the system in production. Great, I said. When? In 11 days. Now, front end was halfway there, back end, I was just about to select Go as the solution. So to go on the safe side, I decided that I will use the well-known rabbit principle. You all use the rabbit principle, right? Everybody here? Yeah, sure. After a few sleepless nights, the result was something like this, with comments. Although the demo went highly successful, maintaining the code was an iterating chaos. 2 years later, we were rewriting in Go and we've created libraries. So the developer writing a new service only needed to connect to the config databases, get some parameters from the database, yada, 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 and listen and serve, right? At this point, I can say that we had a moderated, readable code. But although it looks correctly built, after like just a few months, each service was a species with like a far shared common ancestor. 2.5 years later, different startup though, I understood that libraries are like the basic ingredients from which you can build poor or great solutions. But if you group those functional flows in a recipe, that may be our next leap. Now, a service initialization was a single line doing all the work for you. Great. Using a handle post builder function allowed any structure to implement a post interface, and the request already logged, structure was marshaled, validated, context was built, and this context allowed many functionality. Finally, the developer only needed to write the specific business logic is being asked. I called it the Sapiens area. And it actually delivered the promise. A new developer was actually able to build a new service or maintain code within a few days. I find myself saying, we have an internal developer platform. And the more we invested in it, the more we enjoyed it. Cool. But now that the coding was, I'd say, quite well, I realized that the product and the project, system architecture, QA, support, DevOps, they do not gain much from this platform. You know, it's like my violins are playing in perfect harmony, but all the other parts of the orchestra, I mean, they play nicely, but they played in jazz style, rock style. It did not combine. This is when I realized I do not need an internal developer platform. I need a complete development platform. In the following 2 years, GitOps was a thing. Infrastructure as code, configuration as code, they all became common practices. So I stretched it a little bit wider and adopted everything as code. Git, everything. And that actually shifted our source code control to sort of total control. How does that work? In order to demonstrate the concept, we will launch a new product, concurrency exchange, currency service for getting rates, exchange service will pull the currencies from the currency service and allow a purchase request. We would only need to read the specs, API design, use cases, code, debug, observe, package, deploy, test, benchmark, and create an API kit for 2 services. Okay, I think that 20-something minutes may do. Let's see how we can meet this challenge, okay? I will demonstrate how these steps are kept in alignment all time. I mean, all those steps. And it's not a burden to keep them all aligned. It would actually save me time. The alignment will be kept by a concept that will be Git all, Git your project, Git your specs, Git your code, your testing, your deployment. Everything will follow the Git all promise. I call it an orchestrated development, which gives the developer the time to do his real task. Write beautiful business logic code and algorithm and not repeated boilerplating and infrastructure. And spend more time on the business needs. So we'll go to the demo. Okay, I'll try to start. So we were assigned to this new project in Jira, create currency service, and we'll take ticket number 1, which says brokers should be able to create and update currencies. Clients should be able to get a quote for each currency. So we'll go to our internal platform and we'll add a new project. While we're adding a new project, we'll check out this ticket. Adding a project is a part of the ticket, a part of Git. It will be pushed to Git. And we will select a template and we'll call our project Exchange. Any better? Yeah, perhaps that's better. Our first domain or service will be called currency. And our first method will be get quote. Getting quote needs a currency ID as a parameter. And it's a string and it's required. Okay, nicely specking. We have a response. A response is probably a currency. And a currency has an ID, which is a string. It has a name. And probably a rate, which is a float. Okay, and we want to read that and write it from a database or a cache. So we'll just enable cache. We'll call our collection currency rates. And we'll allow getting and setting this currency, getting a single reply. So we're cool with defining get quote, okay? It's a product thing, right? You would say, I would add the second method and I will call it set currency. Set currency. Okay, when we set in currency, pretty much the same, the ID. It's a requested parameter, the name, and the rate. Okay, up till now, we'll leave it as a string. You'll see why. Up till now, looks everything cool. It's just specking, right? So what I'm about to do is I'm about to click on code it. I'll save my changes to the project. And we do not have a folder for currency. I will code it. Now, coding creates a service. Create a service means the API structure and a connector to the Mongo and everything that we need in order to be able to start writing our project. Generation complete. Sorry for the white background. I've been asked to use a white background. Let's go and open this service. Now, the service that you see is written in a clean architecture style. I don't know if you used domain-driven design. I will not have the time to explain, but high level, the API, there are APIs, application, which is the flow, domain, which is where all the business logic, this is where we should be writing our code in the domain, and infrastructure, plugins to databases, plugins to other APIs, etc. So the service that we see is already runnable. I can click on run and it will just run. It will not supply any business logic, of course. So when I will write a test case, this is a QA stuff, right? When I write a test case, let's say that my currency is Bitcoin, BTC, USD, and I'll fire it up. I'll see that there is a reply. The reply is empty because we did not insert any logic, but there's a reply. I can set that as the response. And when I'm doing that, I'm actually saying that we expect to get this response. Okay, now you can see that the test fails. It fails because we did not implement the business logic. I'll create another test case just for the fun of it, and I'll call it Ethereum. Ethereum, I think I spelled it correctly. And let's say ETH USD as well. I'll do the same drill, just setting the expected response, manually defining, doing the QA job, yeah. And ETH USD. And now I can set up the rate, and I'm good to go with another failed test. Lastly, I will take a negative case of blah blah coin. And the blah blah coin will be BLA USD. And in this case, I actually expect the flow to be rejected, right? And when I reject the blah blah coin, I will say I rejected with a message, currency does not exist. Now, a message can sometimes be just a message, but it's a contract. It's a part of the contract with the UI, with third parties, etc. So it should be a part of your spec. I will select it. I did not save it. I'm wasting time. Enter. Okay. And when I select it, this is the expected reply. Now I have all those tests, but they all, of course, fail. We did not write any code, sadly. So let's do some mocking for a second so we can see how that works, and then we can write the actual code. I'll go to get quote. This is the handler that I receive, and manually I'll just say ID equals currency ID, name equals hard-coded Bitcoin, whether you like it or not, and rate would be the rate that I typed down. Okay, so we have a mock, right? And now when I run all my test cases, so the Bitcoin has passed and the other did not. Okay, so nice idea, but truly when I code it, I can get the mock already and running. Now let's write some real code. So, we're not on the correct project. Okay, so the real code would start with us doing a set currency. And once again, we should only think about the business logic. So if we receive an error from the app, you see we have a cache repo implemented because this is how we define this repo to behave. And we have a set currency and get currency. We'll set the currency, push the context, push the ID, and we need to document in the Mongo will be an entity.currency. We'll fill in all fields, and we do not manipulate the data, so I just whatever data I receive from the front end, this is what I push in here. No changes. And if the Mongo returns an error, then I'll returns an error. Then I'll return a wrapper of a new DB error that does all the login, whatever you need for a DB error to happen with new DB error. So we've connected an API, saved it in the database. We will see how that works in a short while. Next thing we want to do, we want to get the quotes, right? So in a similar manner altogether, we can say if a quote found ERR equals app dot. We use the same cache repo. This time we're going to use get currency by ID. Push the context and the currency ID that we received from the API. Now, if we get an error from our Mongo, meal is lunch. Okay, if we get an error, then we will return a quote and new DB error with error. This is quite simple, but if we did not get an error, but we have we did not find the entity in the database, then we would probably want to do something a little different. Return the quote, but new rejected reply, right? We're rejecting this coin. What is the reject message? The reject message is currency does not exist as we defined in a spec. Spec code put nicely together. And there's the happy scenario. Happy scenario, we're returning the quote and new. Okay, so we're quite happy. We've written a getter, a setter. This is basic crude. And oh, now we're pissed off. Variable of type string is not a float 64. So apparently the guy who did the spec, I don't know where he is, defined that set currency is a string. Now, in many businesses, this is exactly where code and spec would drift apart, right? The developer would fix it, and specs, they'll follow behind a day or two, or year or two, or some time. It can't happen here. Okay, I'll just click on code it. I have to save it. I'll rebuild my service, and nicely set currency is now a float. Once again, it's all connected. Now I can test and see if what I've done is actually working. I go to get quote and I run my test cases and, oh, they fail. Yeah, because I did not seed in the data, right? I'll go to set currency and I want to put some test cases on set currency. And it will be exactly the same. We need to test it up. So I'll do a BTC USD. You'll know that by heart by the end of the meeting. And the currency as well. Expected flow is success. I'll fire it up and it says success. I'll show you that it really did the job in a second. And second thing we need to do is write Ethereum. I always get it wrong. ETH, USD, Ethereum, and this is the rate. Let's fire it up. And I'm saving the changes. And I'm hoping now that when I run get quote, the test cases, they passed. Why did they pass? Because now somewhere in the Mongo, not in the cluster, but in my local, refresh, I have the data. So now spec, database, code, they work together nicely. Okay, nice. So we've coded, we've spec'd, we've tested. I think it's fair enough to say that ticket is done, commit, push, and return to dev. A message for the commit, and we can probably go and eat lunch, right? Well, not yet. I still have some time. So I'll take ticket number 2. Before I do that, just so you see nicely that my Git repo is now updated. So we can see that 90 seconds ago, I've pushed to the currency service and the specs. Specs always go together. Next, I will take ticket number 2. It's a little bit more complicated, but just a bit. Client should be able to purchase currencies, minimal 0.5, maximum 10. Commission 1% for under 10,000, 2% for over 10,000, minimum $25. Actually, this is the code that you would like to write, the business request, right? And not the infrastructure stuff. Infrastructure should be transparent. So, handling that would be in a new service that I will call Exchange. And Exchange would have purchase method. When we're purchasing, we need to say what is the account ID. I'll not be doing anything with it, but let's add it up. And the currency ID that I'm about to purchase. And I need an amount, right? How much do I purchase, which is a float. The response here is a little bit more complicated. The response is a transaction. And I should write it up without no typos. Transaction, and a transaction has an ID. Transaction has the amount, usually the amount that I requested, doesn't have to be, depends on the business logic. And a transaction has a rate. Now, what is this rate? This rate is actually what I will be pulling from the currency service. So currency get quote returns the rate. I just connected service number 1 with service number 2, and we have a total, which is a simple float, and we have the commission. This is where our business logic should rely. And we have calculated field. We'll use a constructor pattern. I will only brief about that. Those two fields will be a part of a constructor. So I'm coding it up, hoping that I not forget anything. Now we can see we have an exchange service, no folder yet, and it's dependent on currency. I already manage my dependency. I click on code it. And this already implements the plug to connect from exchange to currency, all the infrastructure, the API that I just built. So let's open exchange service. New window. Exchange service is built in the same manner. The developer would know it by heart. The API, the application, the domain, the infrastructure, it's all the same. And I already know that I'm going to default app. I can have multiple apps and go to purchase. Okay, so we can write the code right ahead. No, you need test. I write the code right ahead. And I write down, if first thing I want to do, I want to pull the quote from the currency service, API service to service. So if quote ERR equals app, now this app has a currency API connected to it because we connected it on the spec. And currency API has a single method now of get quote, and I'm pushing C and a get quote constructor with currency ID equals currency ID. So I've just connected service to service. It was very hard. I need to rest. And if we get an error, then we probably return entity and error. But if we're getting a good reply, a good quote, then we should probably return a new transaction. I'll write down new transaction. And this is the constructor we'll visit in a minute. I'll push the amount that we received. I'll push the quote that we received. And new. And this is what we will be returning. Now we're getting to the business. The business is writing the logic. So this is the constructor. Basically, constructor is a builder for a structure or an object. A very common pattern. I suggest you use it a lot. In our case, I'll say that an ID, uuid.new, whatever, but for now, I'll just use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't have that as much time. And the next thing I will create TRS equals, I'll steal the constructor from here because I want to return something a little bit more complicated. And push the ID. Push the ID. There's ID. Don't get in my way. So now we have a transaction and I want to do all the calculations. Now this is once again where you shine. You should be spending hours, days, whatever on your business logic. So I allowed myself to pre-write it. And this is the dot calculate. You'll have to believe that I've done a pretty okay job here. This is where I spent my time, and now the only thing I need to do is to call trs.calculate and return trs. If no mistakes, then now it will be runnable. Almost. No solution for typos. Amount. Typos all the way. Okay, looks like it's running. Back to checking if everything's okay. So we have the purchase and we would like to see now if it really works. I'll let a test case, and my first test case would be 1 ETH, RTH. 1 ETH. 1 ETH would actually account ID. We did not do anything with the account ID. Currency. is ETH USD. Amount will be 1, and we'll shoot it up. And because we're in 1600, 1% is 16, the commission is 25. Okay, I know how to write code. Yeah, so we can say that this is the expected response and save the changes. I'll copy that to another test. I call it 2ETH. It's hot in here. And I'll fire it up. Now we're above the 25 limit, so it's 1% of the total. Yeah, looks okay. Quickly copy another one and call it 10ETH, which will be the last positive 10. And I can see that now it's 2%. Okay, somebody told me that doesn't make sense, but yeah, it's 2% now. And last, I would like to test something that does not make sense. Let's take our blah, 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 blah USD, and I'll fire it up, and I'm getting currency does not exist from the currency. For me, it looks perfect, but if we do not like it, we can trace it up, using Jagger in this case, and look it up. Purchase calls currency, currency calls Mongo driver says no documenting the result. Okay, this is the expected behavior. We can save it up, and we're all done with ticket number 2. So we've done our development, developed 2 services that are working together nicely. And the last thing everybody needs to do, and sometimes doesn't like, is the DevOps thing, right? So we need to push for deployment. Benchmark before you deploy, package it, put it in a GCP registry, deploy both services to QA environment, and make sure that the QA has a Postman kit. Oh, we all like that, right? So I'm now checking out, and the first thing I need to do is to benchmark. Now, once again, if the benchmark changes, then I need to save it, right? It's a part of my code. So I'm now creating a benchmark and saying max 6 milliseconds. I want to run 100 requests. I'll just bookmark now. And hey, I've got a good bookmark, and I'll save changes. This is a part of the request. What are the benchmark? It's a part of the request. So done with 1. I want to package it. Many times packaging is automated by the cloud, by the Git. In our case, we like to package things together so we can call it a version. I'll click on package and I'll package it, and we're going to the cloud, CI, please package. And in a second, it will probably, if my phone is fast enough, tell me that everything cool, push into the registry. And okay, and we got hashes. Once again, those hashes saved in a repo. Everything works together. I'll go to Google Cloud Registry. I'll refresh. You can see I've done this drill once or twice, so it should have been empty. Yeah, I'm sorry. And we can see that just now we got a new version, and this new version has a Git hashtag. So I know the Git hashtag for each and every artifact in my registry. Quite happy here. Last thing I need to do, if I recall correctly, before last, I need to deploy to an environment. I'll just check the QA environment. And while I'll be doing that, I said, now we get into the fun part. I need to create a Postman kit for the QAs. No, I do not need to create a Postman kit because this is a part of the process, and we have a Postman kit all ready to go. Let's go back to our deployment. Deploying can sometimes take time. Yeah, it bugs me. Perhaps okay. Oh, cool, I'm done. So the last thing I'll show you before I'll wrap it up is that for each service, I can see what is my local Git hash, what is my QA Git hash, etc. I can compare it, I can pull it and work on the specific version that production is in, or QA is in, or stage is in. and it's all in a single source of truth. So I'll just commit and push all and return to dev. And my time is up, so I'll wrap it up. So just a little about the status. I hope that some of the things that I showed you can help you in your internal developer platform. But if you would like to take this journey with me, what we're thinking of trying to standardize this experience and give it to the community. So if you like it, you can subscribe, and we will soon launch it on website and allow people to join, allow people to contribute and outsource parts of it, all of it, we still do not know. At this time, main thing for us is about sharing with the community.